Let's talk some Democrats. Joining us from Atlanta is the mayor of Atlanta, Andy Young. Joining us in Washington is the former chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Bob Strauss, and Chuck Robb, the former governor of Virginia. Mayor Young, let me ask you first, from the Civil War to civil rights, the South has been sending a message to the rest of the country. What is it now?
I think the message today is essentially that we're still a part of the mainstream of the nation, and that what you saw today is Jesse Jackson, Al Gore, Dukakis, each representing a different section of the nation, all having a major constituency, and I think all doing quite well. Super Tuesday probably won't decide anything, but it will take everybody one step further along the way.
As a very significant black leader in the South, are you happy with the Southern Democratic candidate being Al Gore?
Well, I don't know that you can say he's the Southern Democratic candidate. I would like to see him, if he were the Southern Democratic candidate, I think all the South could get behind him. But Jesse has a strong constituency there, and I don't think you can ignore Governor Dukakis' constituency. I think our job is to let the folk in Illinois and then Pennsylvania, New York, and California sort this out for us and give us a nominee that we can all get behind.
Now, Your Honor, when you and other leaders in the South, political leaders in the South, get together sometime in the future, would you like to see another Super Tuesday like this, or do you think changes should be made?
No, I think this has been very good. I think it accomplished a little more for the Republicans than it did for us, but I don't think there is an old South. I don't think the South is conservative as people thought it was. If you look at the Senate races in 1986, in almost every instance, the most liberal candidate running won. The South is a changing part of the nation. It represents a lot of the diversity of the nation, but it also represents a lot of the hope of the future of the nation. And I think this is good for us.
Mayor Young, what effect do you think, you mentioned Governor Dukakis of Massachusetts, what effect do you think the South will have on him?
Well, I think that's the only thing I wish. I wish he'd spent a little more time here. He was in and out of Atlanta quite a bit. But
You've got the airport, right?
Yeah, well, he came in and had a number of big rallies. The secret of his campaign was that he had lots of volunteers, so he ran a good campaign. Jesse had no money, but also had lots of volunteers and also ran a very good campaign. What I think we're doing, though, is building candidates. I think the primary process develops the candidates. I don't remember John Kennedy being nearly the charismatic person he was on the campaign trail until after he won the nomination and really had the mandate of the people behind him. So I think we're going to do the same thing now.
What is the Democratic Party going to do with Mr. Jackson, the Reverend Mr. Jackson? What's it going to do? Go ahead.
I don't think we have to do anything with him. I think that he's a mainstream Democrat.
I know we start with that, but then what?
He's been the most active person in getting out his voters. His voters not only voted in large numbers in '84 when he didn't win the nomination, they voted in '86 and helped to carry the Senate to the Democratic Party. I think Jesse will be with us as an active, hard campaigning Democratic leader. Whether he accepts a post in an administration or on the ticket, I think is up to him. But regardless, I think he's going to be a very important force. Stopping drugs, investing in children, keeping jobs is something that Democrats are all going to stand for.
In some respects, would you make the argument that that was his most potent appeal tonight, other than the obvious appeal to black voters in the South, was that he kept it simple? He kept it on the subject of drugs and teenage pregnancies in many respects.
Well, I think that's one of the things that every parent and every parent of teenagers or young adults is very worried about. And I think if you put together the concern about jobs and the concern about drugs, you've got an issue that any party that wins the White House is going to have to address.
Don't you find it impressive, Your Honor, that Jesse Jackson went to see former Governor George Wallace of Alabama and discussed his campaign, and Wallace gave him a little advice and was a very friendly meeting?
I think that's wonderful, and I think Martin Luther King would be very proud of him for that. I think that's the kind of reconciliation of races that Martin Luther King preached. But you have to remember that George Wallace came to the SCLC convention in Birmingham and admitted that I was wrong for raising race in the way I did as governor. So you've seen reconciliation on both sides, And I think that's very good for the nation and for the South in particular.
Mayor Young, thank you very much for joining us this evening. You're kind to take the time, because the Democratic Party has now firmly convinced itself that it can't win the White House if it doesn't win the South.